Hi everyone and welcome to Dennis Deep Cuts, the 11th installment. Today I'm going to talk about bands that did only one record. You know, that magical and fantastic album before they broke up. Let's do it. One of the things that always amazed me about what we're doing here, with music is the fact that you can have a bunch of people get together and out of thin air we create something that inspires and excites, and we create something that, if we're lucky, that people continue to talk about and people continue to be inspired by. But sometimes that initial burst of energy and inspiration and creativity, it's almost over before it's begun. And today I'm going to talk about those type of records and those type of bands. I've reached into my hardcore and punk collection. I've taken out 10 records with bands that just did that one record. Some of these records are game changers. Some of these records are records that are groundbreaking beyond belief. And some of these records are just great records, and then there might be a couple of wild cards in there, I know there's a whole slew of really cool bands and records that just put out one record, but today I'm aiming for the punk and hardcore thing. The other records might be another list and another day. I'm always fascinated by punk and hardcore because it's a scene where there's so many amazing bands that are so they're so groundbreaking, and they only put out that one record. And in a lot of cases, bands just put out 1 7-inch, and that might be also an episode for another day. The band only put out one great 7-inch. So let's talk about that today. Let's dig into the volatile and explosive world of the punk one-album wonders. Of course, we had to start right here. Never mind the Bollocks, and especially the Sex Pistols, might be one of the most important cultural phenomena of the past 50 years. Not only sonically, but also politically and aesthetically. There's nothing that rivals them. The only thing I can think about maybe is the impact that the Beatles had. Of course, bigger than the Pistols. But apart from Beatles, I think the Pistols might be one of those bands that, massively important. They started in 75. Record came out in 77. And I just got to be honest, few things have come close to this. Maybe something would have happened without them. They were not the first punk band. It's not the first punk album. But the power of the Pistols and what they did is pretty much unparalleled. I don't need to talk too much about them because, there's books and documentaries and TV shows that trace every step of their life, and you can watch the new Danny Boyle TV show, or you can watch John Lydon turn into bitter old man in real time. But there's no denying the power of this record, The lyrics are funny, smart, and as potent as ever. The music is excellent, heavy, great. It's amped up rock and roll, but so what? It's pretty fucking glorious. The chaos surrounding the band with their meteoric rise eventually was too much, and after kind of pretty ill-fated US tour, John Lydon left the band. Dodgy management and people trying to continue the band afterwards, but it wasn't really the same, and that was it. There's so much to read and watch about them, so I don't need to tell you that. One thing that I think about a little bit is the fact that if they would have managed to stay together, what would have John Lydon's artsy-fartsy pretensions, how would have mixed with Steve Jones, Paul Cook's meat and potatoes riffage? Who knows? Anyway, we got the Public Image Limited. They put out a whole slew of fantastic records. We also got the Professionals. And then we got the TV show Pistol. Let me know what you think about Danny Boyle's TV show Pistol in the comments below. I must say, I was quite hesitant to watch it and quite skeptical. But I must say, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good time for sure. But yeah, the Sex Pistols, never mind the bollocks. One of the numerous bands that saw the Pistols live and was inspired to start their own band was X-Ray Spex. Fronted by the charismatic Polystyrene, they issued their sole record Germ-Free Adolescent in 1978. Inventive, original, and a great record spearheaded by Polystyrene's piercing vocals and the pretty odd inclusion of saxophone that wasn't really that common in punk records back in those days. Polly became an inspiration for tons of women, and they quite often been cited as an inspiration for the whole Riot Girl scene. She left the band in 1979, did a solo record, and then became a Hare Krishna. Half of the band, they got a new singer and rebranded themselves as Classic Nouveau and put out a couple of pretty decent new wave, new romantic records. There's also a pretty good documentary about Polystyrene called I Am a Cliche. That is worth checking out if you want to know more about her life. But this is that's a pretty fantastic record. X-Ray Spex. Started in Los Angeles in 1976, the Germs quickly grew a reputation of being the most chaotic and out-of-control punk bands. Singer Darby Crash was he's pretty much chaos incarnate, but he's also a really talented songwriter. After 2 7-inches, they put out their solo record produced by none other than Joan Jett. And unlike their live recordings and live shows, the record is great. It still has a little bit of a chaotic edge to it, but the songwriting is tight. Songs are well constructed, short and powerful, and the lyrics are really cool as well. It didn't really sound like anything that came out of the UK at that time. It sounds very American and very different. And it's hard to underestimate how much of an impact the Germs had on the LA punk scene, but also the American punk scene in general. On December 7th, 1980, Darby Crash took his own life by a heroin overdose, which was slightly overshadowed by the fact that the next day John Lennon got shot and killed. So a little bit of you can say John Lennon stole some of the thunder. I always been kind of interested in seeing what would have happened if the Germs would have managed to stick together. I mean, the writing was on the wall, there was chaos in the band, they were breaking up and reforming and so on, but if they would have managed to stay together, what would it have been like? Shortly before Darby died, he went to the UK, and when he came back, he was obsessed with Adam and the Ants, and he started dressing in full-on pirates outfits. And it would have been interesting to see where that would have taken the Germs. You know, who knows? They could have been super cool. In 2008, there's a feature film about the Germs called What We Do Is Secret. It is slightly corny, I must say. But it did make the Germs get back together and play shows. But with the singer that played, the actor that played Darby in the movie was the singer. I saw them, they played in Stockholm years back, and I got invited to the show, and it was a slight surreal experience. Because if you closed your eyes and sort of just listened, it did kind of sound like the Germs. It was like, I'm like, oh, it does sound like the Germs. But then you open your eyes and there's like an actor acting Darby Crash on stage with a homemade Millencolin t-shirt. And it was just super weird. I didn't know what to make of it. I'm like, this makes no sense at all. I'm not against reunions. As you know, I've reunioned some stuff myself, so I'm not really against reunion, but it was just a really, really surreal experience. And also, if you recognize the guitar player, Pat Smear, after the Germs, he went on to play in a little band called Nirvana, and then he's in like an alternative rock band called the Foo Fighters as well. So yeah. There are a few records that has had such an impact on youth and subculture as this one. Minor Threat, Out of Step, first pressing. I have 5 different versions of this record for the Protocol. Formed in Washington, D.C. in 1980, and Minor Threat together with bands like Bad Brains and SOA and Faith reshaped punk into what would become hardcore music. They're also the band that you know, coined the term straight edge. Jeff and Ian also started Discord Records, which is one of the most important record labels, indie record labels of all time, and they pretty much set the template for how to start up a punk record label. They put out 2 7-inches, and then they put out this spectacular full-length record. It's slightly more subdued than the relentlessness of the 7-inches, but it's such a statement of the record. From start to finish, tight, explosive, great songwriting, angry and heartfelt. This record has been on, it's been on in steady rotation since I forced my friend Carl to sell it to me in 1989. The legacy they left behind, both musically and culturally, it's truly the stuff of legends. The people in the band went on to play in some pretty awesome bands after this, like Palehead and 3 and Dag Nasty, Bad Religion, High Back Chairs, Junkyard, Fugazi, The Evens, and one of the guys plays in a really, really cool band called Fake Names. And Ian and Jeff still does Discord records. One of these days, I might do my top 10 Discord releases, because it's just the greatest record label of all time. Minor Threat, Out of Step. Without it, I wouldn't be here, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, thanks guys. Formed in Detroit in 1981, Negative Approach took what Minor Threat and Black Flag did and just turned it up to 11. After really fantastic 7-inch, Negative Approach released their only record in 1983, right before they split up. I would say that this record is a true hardcore classic in its own right. Harder and more aggressive than most of the peers, but still with songs that are sharp and catchy. John Brannon's voice is rough and aggressive in all the right ways. When I started playing in my first hardcore band, Step Forward, this record was massive for me, and I still remember sitting at home trying to learn the songs so I could steal them and sort of repurpose them to Step Forward songs. And this is just 10 songs of pure hardcore bliss. They broke up in 1983. I think John Brannon tried to soldier on with a little bit of different lineup. They went on tour on this record, and then they just said, "Yeah, let's not do this anymore." He went on to form the highly underrated Laughing Hyenas, which is a truly spectacular band. I think in 2006, Negative Approach got back together, and they've been touring on and off ever since. And I was lucky enough to see them in Gothenburg, a couple of years back, and they were just great. They were as violent and aggressive as they ever were, and this record is just like a true hardcore classic. Let's move back to DC for another one of those Washington DC hardcore bands that only put out one record. Could be a list of its own, because I don't know, they only wanted to do one record in DC. But what a record it is. Rites of Spring's debut album. Rites of Spring started in 1983 and were really instrumental in the Revolution Summer. The Revolution Summer was when a huge part of the hardcore scene decided that they had enough of the violence and bullshit that was taking over the scene and wanted to have a different approach, basically. Using the energy and anger of hardcore, but channeling it to a more personal realm. The Rites of Spring record was released in 1985, and I mean they only played a handful of shows, and then they broke up in January of 1986. But they left behind them one of the most heartfelt and energetic recordings ever out of DC. People try to put the label emo on them, talking about emotional hardcore, but that just seems lazy. Rites of Spring did, however, together with a bunch of other bands, really take hardcore in a very new and exciting direction. Yeah, they're one of the kind, and this is a record that everyone that loves music should own. It's just that important. The singer Guy and the drummer Brendan went on to a pretty decent band called Fugazi, and then last year, the drummer from Rites of Springs, Brendan, he started playing in a pretty cool band called Fake Names. Look at me. I've made it. I mean, it's... I'm not sure how much an impact on the world this record had, but in my world, when this record came out, it was everything. The melodic sensibility of 7 Seconds, the breakdown parts of Youth of Today, and just the general vibe of New York hardcore. I am, of course, talking about Gorilla Biscuits with their phenomenal record Start Today. They started in 1986. They released their really cool 7-inch in 1988, and then this record came out in 1989. I bought it when it came out, and I played it so much that the grooves are worn out on it. When my hardcore band Step Forward, that I talked about earlier, or Stealing from Negative Approach, broke up, me and David said that we were going to start a band and we were going to call it Refused. And a friend of ours called us up and said, "You want to come play a show in Luleå?" And we said, yeah, of course. We said yes, even though we had like 3 of our own songs. But we made up for it by playing 3 or 4 Gorilla Biscuit songs. I mean, well, people won't know. We're just going to play Gorilla Biscuit songs. And it's funny how that works out. When we started Refused, this was the template. Well, like we looked at Gorilla Biscuits and said, "Oh, that's what we want to be." And then circumstance, the people that we play with, the influences that we had, and the way we played, it became something very, very different. But man, oh man, what this record meant to me and how much I played it and how much I love it. I still have a huge Gorilla Biscuits poster that came in this record from their European tour framed on my wall. They were working on a second record when they broke up in 1992, and I'd rather have a second record with Gorilla Biscuits so I can hear the song Distance recorded than having them included on this list. But yeah, what a band. They reunited, and they play shows once in a while whenever they feel like it, and you're lucky enough to see them live a couple of times. And then of course Walter went on to start another highly influential band in my world, Quicksand, and the singer Siv started a band called Siv. That was also pretty cool. But Gorilla Biscuits, the groove's worn down. Someone send me a new copy, please. All right, let's finish up with a couple of records this side of the millennia and not just old music, okay? One band that's pretty obscure, but was really, really big in our world in the early, mid-2000s, was this band, Young Wasteners, out of Copenhagen in Denmark. The late 90s and early 2000s was a weird little time for hardcore. You had metalcore happening, and then in the underground you had like D-beats and crustcore and grindcore and thrashy hardcore. You know, a lot of dudes in black military pants meandering about without reason or choruses. And then we found the Young Wasteners. They're one of those bands that they look like punks, and they played punky hardcore in the vein of Dead Kennedys or Toxic Reasons or the Zero Boys. The songwriting is crisp and clean. The singer is amazing. And I just gotta say, it hands down one of my favorite records of the 2000s. The record is from 2002. I mean, probably one of those bands that they formed in 2002 and then they broke up in 2003. But this record and Young Wasteners together with Andy Peterson's Army set up a really interesting and creative scene in Denmark, in Copenhagen, in the 2000s. It also inspired us up here in the North quite a lot. And yeah, this is just an amazing record. There's some really cool YouTube footage of them when they play on like maybe Danish TV. But I mean, you need to go and check it out. I'll put the link in below for the Young Wasteners live clip. Just amazing. You know, bands break up for all different kinds of reasons. Usually it's surrounding ego and insecurity, because that's at least in my experience. You know, people don't get along, or people have different ideas of what they want to do with the music, or what they want to do in their lives. You know, sometimes you're not on the same page, and then sometimes it's much more tragic than that. The Exploding Hearts out of Portland, it started in 2001. In 2003, they put out their one and only record, Guitar Romantic. It's a fantastic record, filled with power pop gems in the vein of Undertones and the Buzzcocks. Just after they put out the record, they played a show in Francisco, and while driving home, they lost control of their van and crashed, and 3 out of the 4 people in the band died, which is insanely tragic. It's one of those things where you think about that, and then you think about ego and pettiness and the bullshit that we have, and these guys didn't even have the chance to bicker and become, you know, become angry with each other. They were in their early 20s, and it's one of those bands I think they could have been contenders, because this record is phenomenal, but they never had a chance. Life is not fair for multiple reasons, but at least we have a really fantastic record to listen to. Let's end at home, all right? In the mid-2000s, there was a whole new scene of punk and hardcore popping out. And it's quite an exciting time. And I decided that I wanted to start a record label to support these bands and give them a platform, and especially the bands from here, from Umeå. And we released a ton of cool records on that record label. One of the coolest ones was this band, The Vicious. Started in 2005. They put out a 7-inch, and then we put out a mini album with them, and then we put out their only full-length record, Alienated. They took inspiration from the punk scene that was happening in Copenhagen at the time, but also bands like the Vipers and the Damned and Dead Moon, you know. They got rid of all the distortion, but they had a lot of attack in the hi-hat, a lot of propulsion and energy. And this album is great. It's 10 songs of highly melodic, yet powerful and catchy punk rock hardcore. I'd say one of the things that really sets this apart is the melodic language that Robert brought to the record. Plus, I think Andre's tight and energetic drumming is just fabulous. They broke up in 2008, and most of the people morphed into a band called Masshysteri. That's also pretty awesome. And if you think that some of the people in The Vicious looks familiar, you are correct. Sarah, that played guitar in The Vicious, has for the last 10 years been playing in Invasion together with me. And we also did a band called International Noise Conspiracy together. And before that, she was in a fucking rad band called The Donuts. And Andre, the drummer, you will recognize from DS13 when we speak about thrashy hardcore bands. And then he's also been together with me in Invasion for the past, I think he's like the past 100 years. Yeah, and Robert, the singer, went on to have a really successful solo career here in Sweden under the name of Hurra. And maybe one day I'll talk about my record labels and the releases that we had, and maybe a top 10 of the Niveau releases. I don't know. But there we have it. 10 bands that only put out one record, but the record is fantastic. There's a whole bunch of more hardcore bands that put out just one record. But Let me know what's your favorite record. What's your favorite band that only put out one record? The comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for watching me talking about these things. I'm gonna pack up and go on tour with Buck and Gillen. So see you next week, my friends. Stay wild.